the Yankees, who were riding high coming into last night's game, they'd gone 5-1 in their last 6. You got your ace on the mound last night. You're setting up for this really strong night. Luke Voigt is back. And then you lose to the Royals 6-5. And it's really just a reminder that even though the Yankees have made things look better over the last week, there is still plenty to fix here. And last night, they spoil a really good outing from Gerrit Cole. Looks a little different these days with Cole, but a really strong outing. And the Yankees are now 8-7 when their ace is on the mound. That's not good. The main culprit, of course, Jonathan Loaizaga, who actually has been great this season, but had some bad defense behind him. So stop me if you heard that before with the Yankees. And he ends up giving up 4 runs in the 8th inning, which didn't leave much time for a rally. Things to like: DJ hitting in the clutch. Luke Voigt, a big help, hits the homer nearly at a second. Instead, it's a triple. If you're a Yankee fan, you were going into last night expecting some really big things, and you just watched it basically all fall apart in front of your eyes.
Yeah, it's a terrible loss. I mean, a frustrating loss, bad loss. Leave 13 guys on base, tying run in the 8th and 9th inning, both on base. The Yankees' inability to drive in that run 0 for 10 once again with runners in scoring position. I know they hit home runs. It was great with Void and obviously LeMahieu to make it a one-run game, but still a frustrating loss nonetheless. And, for the Yankees here, the little things. I mean, Tyler Wade, I can't listen to anybody tell me how great of a defensive player Wade is when he botched up what could have been an easy ground ball double play to second base. He, double clutches the baseball, throws home, runner safe at home because of his inability at time to make a quick decision there and to be hesitant with his decision. So his hesitancy allowed the Royals to score a run as he goes home. And I get Dyson's running and a fast runner up at the plate, and it wasn't a hard hit ground ball to second base, but still, I mean, you watch it and you see it. I'd rather try to attempt to turn 2 than Wade doing the double clutch trying to throw home in order to get the runner out at home. Listen, not good enough. I'm sorry, it's not good enough. At some point when you listen to Aaron Boone say, well, we control everything that we still need to control here moving forward. We can still be the team that everyone expected us to be. We're in control of everything. Well, you get a game last night, after, yesterday giving a little bit of praise, sweeping the Jays up in Buffalo, taking 2 or 3 at home against the Oakland Athletics. Here comes the start with Gerrit Cole on the mound, and we know he's going to get checked, and we'll get into all that nonsense for Major League Baseball and the embarrassment that it is for Rob Manfred in baseball across the sport. But you get Cole getting checked, and he was minding his P's and Q's and did his thing. He talked about after the game having to, evolve as a starter. The strikeouts are down. The spin rate is down for Gerrit Cole, as he only had 6 Ks last night. But it was a very effective, 108 pitches, 7 innings of work for Cole. The Yankees, unfortunately, you can't lose those games. At some point, you got to rip off a winning streak. At some point, taking 2 or 3 is just not going to be good enough because of the start that you got off to. Division that you're in, and I know the Tampa Bay Rays have come crashing back down to earth a little bit here, but still, last night was a terrible loss. I mean, there's no other way to cut it. It's a bad loss. I mean, are we going to look at meanings long term? No. You watch a baseball game last night. You got Gerrit Cole on the mound against a Kansas City Royal team that is not particularly good. And you go out there and you lose to the Royals last night, and there are a number of different ways why you lost that game. Leave 13 guys on base, 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position, defensive miscues, all of these things. Then you get a big fat L on a Tuesday night in the Bronx, and I'm sorry, at some point you got to say, well, it's just not good enough. I mean, it just isn't. I mean, the sky's not falling, but it is a bad Yankee loss last night in the Bronx.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have Loaizaga, who really has been tremendous for them. I mean, he had 14 1/3 scoreless innings over 11 outings. His spin rate was actually down on some of his pitches last night also. So everyone's kind of adjusting to a little bit of a new normal here, although he said after the game, this is not, indicative of anything. He doesn't use anything on the ball. And so now, we're all doing this like kangaroo court kind of thing. But the thing is unfortunately, you just didn't leave enough time for the rally. And yes, the Yankees ultimately couldn't come through. The thing about the Cole starts, though, and I heard this yesterday in the afternoon with Craig and Evan, and I've heard a lot with Gary Sanchez, and about whether or not Gary should be catching some Cole starts just so that you can have your strongest lineup possible, because Gary's had such an excellent June. Listen, Moose, this was the question that we all asked ourselves once it became very clear that Kyle Higashioka was going to become the personal catcher for Gerrit Cole. But Gary was such a zero, and he had such a bad offensive year last year in the shortened season. it never really came up. So now it is coming up, and I got to be honest with you, I would still keep Higashioka behind the plate, not just because he homered last night, but you have Garrett Cole through his first 8 starts this year, 78 strikeouts. I mean, he was on an unbelievable stretch. We were talking about the Cole train and about, him and DeGrom being neck and neck, and that kind of conversation has gone by the wayside, but that really was a conversation like only about a month and a half ago. His last 7 starts, 48 Ks. So he obviously is trying to figure out something a little bit different here. He's adjusting. The guy's got all the talent and skill in the world, and I had no doubt that he was still going to be the ace of this staff going away, even if he can't use anything to help him get a grip or spin on the ball. But the fact is that this is a time when you actually have to keep everything the same for Garrett Cole. Like, this is the time when I understand that Gary's great offensively, but you have to keep Higashioka behind the plate because it is more important that Garrett Cole feels as comfortable as possible in each of his starts as opposed to getting Gary's bat in the lineup. If you need Gary Sanchez to beat the Kansas City Royals at home in June, you may be more screwed than we thought you were. So I would not mess with that relationship right now, especially as we know that Cole is trying to adjust to the new crackdown on foreign substances. This is not the time I'm changing anything for my star pitcher.
Well, but there's a rub to that narrative as well. Is Gary's earned it? I mean, Gary's earned it. Gary's the best offensive player on this team right now. That is what he has been here for the last 8-10 games a month. In the month of June, we've talked about it. I mean, where Aaron Boone's giving him all the credit in the world. So, I mean, you're saying that. So Garrett Cole is this great arm talent, great starting pitcher, but he could not adjust to Gary Sanchez being behind home plate. I mean, you're going to take the best bat out of the team because we know Cole's not going to be as dominant. We do know that. I mean, the ERA has gone up. The strikeouts have gone down. The home runs have gone up. He's given up 5 home runs since, he has been put on as the face of spider tack and sticky substances. So we know all that. So Cole is what he is, right? He's not going to be the 326 strikeout Garrett Cole that he was with the Houston Astros. Doesn't mean that he can't be good. And, of course, he's going to be the ace of the team. I mean, there's really not much competition when you look at Garrett Cole. The question, the Yankees paid him to be, one of the best pitchers, a top 5 pitcher in all of Major League Baseball when they gave him $324 million. So I look at Garrett Cole, and now he's a product of Kyle Higashioka behind home plate. I mean, there does come... Well,
it's not a product, it's his preference.
Well, that's fine, but at some point the preference gets flushed down the toilet.
I mean,
at some point, not yet, but there will come that point if Gary Sanchez continues to hit. I'm sorry. I mean, you look at Kyle Higashioka, even with the home run last night, he's hitting a $191. He is not nearly the offensive force that Sanchez can be, and the Yankees have hamstrung themselves because they've got Giancarlo Stanton as DH. So as long as he stays healthy, and the Yankees don't want to play him in the outfield, and if Sanchez continues to hit, he's gonna get into the conversation of catching Garrett Cole to the point where Aaron Boone was asked about it. He said, we thought about it. Aaron Boone after the game last night said, Gary's gonna be in the lineup tonight. He hopes that if everything goes well tonight, Gary's gonna be in the lineup on Thursday afternoon as well.
Wow, that is what he hopes. Day game after a night game.
Day game after a night game. That's how well Gary's hitting right now. And then he's going to roll into the weekend for the Boston Red Sox. So he said he loves the way that Gary looks at the plate right now. He's on an absolute tear. And I do think that Garrett Cole's preference might be Kyle Higashioka. Performance does factor in at some point. Maybe not now. Maybe not with the adjustments that Garrett Cole has to make dealing with the fact that he can't have a substance on the baseball and how that was led to the uptick in the performance with the Astros and a little bit obviously last year with the Yankees and the strikeout rates and the dominance that he had in being this K pitcher. But at some point, Maggie, if Gary, like I've mentioned all along, Sanchez controls the narrative. If he hits the way the Yankees envision him hitting, it's going to be very, very difficult to take him out of that lineup. And if we ever get to October and the Yankees are a playoff team, I'd have a hard time envisioning the Yankees starting Kyle Higashioka hitting under 200 and putting Gary Sanchez, if he is an all-star, great offensive catcher, on the bench in October.
Well, listen, if you're talking about performance, look at Garrett Cole's performance. He's not a product of Kyle Higashioka, but his ERA is 1 full run less with Higashioka than it is Gary Sanchez. And if you're finding yourselves in tight games, which the Yankees are finding themselves almost exclusively in tight games, then ask yourself what's more important, the fact that Garrett Cole has his preference and feels as comfortable as possible, or the fact that you have to one day out of the week find a place for Gary Sanchez and either put him at DH and have Giancarlo Stanton take a seat that day or shuffle around something else. Like, to me, I'm not going to go to Garrett Cole right now and say, listen, suck it up, we got to put Gary Sanchez in. Like, when you say, you're basically telling him at this point, we think that Gary is more important than your preference and your performance, because the proof is in the numbers for Garrett Cole and Higashioka. It is a relationship that works. And I would put it on the rest of the Yankee offense and say, listen, when you have Garrett Cole who's putting you in every position to win that game, he only gives up 2 earned runs after he pitches 7 strong. The rest of the offense should be able to pick that up, especially against a team like the Royals. You want to talk about the postseason? Still, I'd stay with the Higashioka and Cole. But you want to talk about the postseason? All right, maybe you have a little bit better of an argument. But in games like this, to disrupt that relationship now, when it's basically that's been the most consistent thing from the Yankees since Garrett Cole got here, why would I do that? I can't justify it if I'm Boone, if I'm Cashman, if I'm anybody. Not on a Tuesday in June to try to shake it up, because I feel like I need Gary that badly to beat the Royals. By the way, he got in the game.
Listen, he did. He pinch hit for Kyle Higashioka, even with Kyle hitting the home run. Well, it's a matter of it got in. We're at this point in the conversation because Sanchez is hitting. That's the point. Gary's controlling the narrative. If he hits, he's going to get an opportunity. It might not be on a Tuesday, June 9th, but it could be on an August night, a September night, and an October night. I mean, that is where if Garrett Cole might have a preference throwing to Kyle Higashioka. If you're telling me he's a product of Kyle, then we could have a conversation.
I've never said
you tell
that.
me I know you didn't, but I don't think great pitchers are a product of the catcher. That I think they can throw to anybody. So
his ERA is
Garrett
one
Cole,
full run lower with Higashioka.
Well, that's great. That's great. We also know Garrett Cole's a different pitcher now than he was before.
Right. So why are you changing
Garrett
more
Cole,
stuff up on him?
Every statistical analysis, I could look at Garrett Cole before Spider Tack, and I could look at after Spider Tack. Because he was clearly using substance. He was clearly putting stuff on the baseball. The spin rate was down last night to the low point that it has been in 4 years. So we know he's going to be a different pitcher. So there does come a point here where the offense from Sanchez can make up for what Garrett Cole is no longer as a starter. He's not nearly as dominant. Can he be good? Can he be great? Can he win games? Absolutely.
He gave up 2 runs last night in 7 innings.
Is he ever going to be? His walk rate is up. The strikeouts are down.
What
Maggie's
about the results?
Not the same. The Yankees paid for the pitcher in 2019 that had 326 strikeouts. That guy is gone. The spin rate is down. That guy is gone. So if I'm looking at it and I say, well, if I'm the Yankees, if Gary continues to hit, Gary's going to put himself into the conversation. Hell, Boone was asked about it. They gave it serious consideration about Sanchez catching last night. That's how good he has been. So you might say, no, okay, not on a June Tuesday night. Well, it was in the thought process for the Yankees last night going into the game about putting Sanchez in the lineup. Boone, after the game, said Sanchez, day game after a night game, he hopes to have Gary in the lineup at catcher on Thursday afternoon against the Kansas City Royals. Gary controls this here as long as he continues to hit. And it might not be on a June night as Cole's going through these adjustments. But I'll tell you, if he continues to be the offensive force that he has been here in the month of June, I think Gary's going to put himself into play to be a catcher at times for Garrett Cole. And I think he deserves it.
But even if they were considering him last night, think about what you just said, though, right? So they considered putting him in the lineup last night to catch Cole. They ultimately didn't do it. They had Higashioka. And then what do they say, right? What do they say? They say that it's possible that he could catch the night game tonight and then catch the day game after it. I mean, are you not worried about Gary Sanchez, what that could possibly do to his health? Are you not worried at all that doing that might actually be something where, that might not be in the best interest of Gary Sanchez if they actually end up doing that. I don't know if they're going to. You might end up getting
He's a
Giancarlo
professional
Stanton.
athlete. At some point, we got to take the kids' gloves off. I mean, catchers have caught day games after night games before. They don't fall apart before our very eyes.
I get it, but Moose, that's not really the practice these days. Let's be honest.
I get during when you have catchers that were catching 145 games a year. Those guys are long.
Yeah, but
gone.
Gary is the starter now. I mean,
I
it's
understand,
clear.
and rightfully so. He's earned it.
I know,
mean,
but I'm just saying they're showing you where they're putting their preference, right? They're showing you they're like, we're willing to make Gary potentially, have to work extra hard, whatever, have to carry some extra load for us just because we think it's important that Higashioka catches Cole. That's how important it was.
They also thought it was important because they said we're going to be good enough offensively against the Kansas City Royals, and they were wrong, and they lost the game. And Gary eventually got into the game, so all that factors into the opponent too. I mean, if we're looking at the timeline, it's July and August, or even if it was last night and it was a better opponent, could I have envisioned Gary getting the start last night? I could, because that's how well he's swinging the bat right now. I think the Yankees looked at it and said, we're going to be good enough offensively, the return to Luke Voigt, to beat the Kansas City Royals. Unfortunately, they were wrong. Cole was good. The offense was terrible with runners in scoring position. They left 13 guys on base. And, just like years gone by, how did they account for their offense? They accounted for their offense by hitting the ball over the fence.